Hey y'all, Elio here with some quick housekeeping. What started as a 2-hour recording session for episode 1 ended up spanning nearly 5 hours. So it's been split into 2 parts for easier listening. Part 1 comes out now, and part 2 will be later this week. With that said, thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoy.
This video will contain spoilers for all of Endwalker as of Pandemonium's release, so please be aware of that going forward. It's an incredible experience to play through for the first time, so I would encourage you to go back and do that if you haven't already before you listen to this.
Hey y'all, welcome to the inaugural episode of Endtalkers. I'm Elio Foreshadowings.
I'm Niniri.
And I guess today we're talking about what I think will be, what is part 1 and probably around a 7-part series going over Endwalker.
Yeah, not counting patch and raid videos, which we will also be doing.
Yes, and I think the plan currently is to try and do the role quests as a separate video as well.
Yes, that's right.
Obviously diving into that way ahead of time, but the fact that they adapt and change the dialogue for the role quests, depending on if you play them before finishing Endwalker or after finishing Endwalker,
yes,
is just a very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up doing at least my healer one as I was playing through because I was so listening to what the devs had said. I was like, oh god, I have to play it as I'm playing. I can't miss a quest.
I totally feel that. For my money, I heard Yoshi P and I was very ready to do it that way, but I got so into the story I ended up beelining it. I will say that I was very surprised that doing them after the story, I was just as satisfied, and in some ways, for me personally, not that I would recommend it for others, but for me personally, it actually ended up, I think, being a better call, because experiencing the story as this rush of a conflict, I think just worked really well. It also meant that I finished the entirety of Endwalker in the first 3 days of it being out.
Oh yeah, you finished way before me.
Well, in that case, let me do a quick covering of basic business, and that is now for a quick moment of self-promotion. If you could like and subscribe, it would mean a lot to us and help us to reach out to new ears for lore goodness. I'd also really appreciate a comment with anything you liked, your ideas and theories, or even just the things you'd like to see in future videos. If you enjoy listening to our conversations, you should come check out our Discord, where we talk about Final Fantasy XIV lore and have an all-around good time. Oh, and if you'd like to see us be, financially stable and able to create content full-time, think about tossing us $1 on Patreon. With those channel running responsibilities out of the way, let's continue.
Okay, let's get into one of my favorite MMO expansions that has ever existed.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing is for me, number two is Shadowbreaker, so in terms of stories, yeah, I don't think any other MMO I've played has come close to the vast majority if we're discounting ARR because we're talking about expansions. I think my number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, if we're talking exclusively story, it might just be all Final Fantasy XIV for me, including ARR in the 5th spot, but still. Yeah,
absolutely. I think for my money, not story-wise, Guild Wars 2 has a lot, especially Path of Fire and the maps there, just that feeling of exploration. I'm a very big fan of. And then also I have very fond memories of Wrath of the Lich King from World of Warcraft.
I was going to say, if I was going to do my general top 5, it would probably be Shadowbringers, Endwalker, Heaven's Ward, Wrath of the Lich King, and Guild Wars 1, Nightfall.
Oh, yep, of course, Nightfall. I guess we can just start off talking about, we're not necessarily going to go in a hyper-linear order, but to start somewhere, we can talk about sort of the beginning of the end, the standing at the port side at Limsa, preparing to go to Sharlayan.
Yeah. First of all, I'm sure we both have notes on the cameos.
Oh yeah. That was exactly what I was looking at. So you caught the Momozigo and Milala?
Yes, I did. Momozigo, my eyes, as I was watching the cutscene, my eyes just zoomed in on her. I was like, whoa, is that...
Yeah, I'll say for my money, I'd say 90%, if not more, of the cameos I immediately call. Now, part of that comes from like half the time their wardrobes are so much more specific than the like NPCs around them that it's easy to catch on. But other times, I think it's the fact that the vast majority of job quests I had done within the past 6 months, and so I was very ready to recognize everyone.
Yeah, the integration of the job quests, the job quest NPCs in Endwalker was a delight at every turn, to be honest.
It was phenomenal, and it was the fact that they really got everyone in, and no one at all was like, why is this person here? Every single person was like, oh, yeah, that person makes sense for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was just made me thrilled, and so far, I think I've seen every job quest. Every single one has people from it.
Yeah. I think the Astrologian just has its antagonist, but...
Yes.
Which counts.
I mean, but also his was the only cameo where it's like, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
Silvestri.
That's right, Silvestri. Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw him, we're jumping forward a little bit, but the first time I saw him, I was like, that can't be right. That's not him. And then he turns up again, obviously, and I'm like, it is.
I was really wondering how much the cameos do or don't show up if you've completed the job quest. I mean, there's no reason to hide it, right? Even if you haven't, It's like, okay, you just don't recognize it. But it made me wonder if there are any differences in Endwalker, whether you've finished certain content or not.
I think there is, because on my, obviously, the account that I play on with Niniri is a new account that I had to make when I moved to Singapore. I haven't done all of the job quests, and I noticed that the job quest NPCs that you've done the job quest to seem to have more dialogue in the
interesting
in Alamigo than the ones you haven't.
That's super cool. It's one of those things where the fact that Yoshi P respects so much that these characters, these stories all have matter to us, and how to integrate them without them being obtrusive is such a priority, and it is stated priority. Is just the thing is it delights me in and of itself, but the sort of principle of its existence proves something to me that also delights me.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to how much he values our time in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another great example of that is how much Endwalker is not just a continuation of Shadowbringers, is not just a conclusion in its own right, it is a celebration of all the expansions prior. And I mean, literally, Endwalker opens with you standing on, Portside and Limsa, hearing the story of Thancred first meeting Louisoix, right? Like the fact that it opens referencing Louisoix and the legacy that of the road we've come so far is just good shit.
I would have to say, I mean, to follow the song motif carried on throughout Endwalker, I would.
Yeah.
It's almost like an ode to the game, to the people that love the game, Endwalker feels like.
Absolutely. And the great thing, too, is how much it spends its time making you unsure how much it's a dirge versus an ode.
Ah, yes.
The amount of time in Endwalker that I think deftly goes through different emotions. Because I think one thing I have a really hard time with in things like anime is how often things will tonally change. Just on a dime.
Right.
Endwalker, and I think broadly Final Fantasy XIV takes its time to there will be moments sometimes where emotions shift quickly because of the reality of a situation, but it doesn't feel like we're going from serious to jokey just to hit a joke beat as much as maybe a moment of levity can be broken, but that's in a way that, like, flashing forward, Garlemald with Julius, and when you have that moment of him, this moment of humanity with him and all the people at the camp right before the primal call comes out.
I mean, it's like I said, it's an ode given to us by our favorite wandering minstrel.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think there's something to be said for the tonal management of Endwalker. I almost said Endtalker then. I think I'm digging myself up a bit much there. This is relevant later as well, obviously, but I just want to say I'm really glad to see more Students of Baldesion content.
Oh, I was thinking the same thing. And I noticed it and was thinking it the first time through, but especially now reviewing it, I didn't quite realize how much I think Baldesion stuff is actually also set up for later.
Yeah. So Do we just want to explain in brief what the students were for people that haven't done Eureka and stuff like that?
Please, by all means, go ahead. I had been planning on it.
So the students of Baldesion are essentially an organization within Sharlayan, within sort of the city-state of Sharlayan, dedicated to the gaining of knowledge like the rest of Sharlayan, but also using it in a slightly more active way, perhaps, than the rest of Sharlayan may have.
Yeah, they're not like the bibliotheques, the
No.
the sort of conservative group of Sharlayan. They're much more likely to be their members consist of people like Kryle and Graha, so that says it.
Yeah.
It's almost as enough.
They were led by Kryle's dad, Galof. Wait, is that right, Dad?
Yeah, her adoptive father.
Yeah, adoptive father. That's right. Okay. So yeah, they're led by Galof, Kryle's adoptive father, and they were based on an island within Sharlayan called the Isle of Val. The Isle of Val, you actually hear during, I believe it's late ARR, has disappeared. The Isle disappears, and we're not really sure what happens to it. Kryle turns up. There are a few students that are still alive, obviously Graha. We learn, of course, when we go to Eureka, that it is the Isle of Val that has been sort of twisted by, first of all, some of the extremely powerful magical artifacts that were there, but also the attempt to destroy an Aetherial who had infiltrated the Isle of Val and was about to get away with some extremely valuable, like, arcane knowledge.
Basically, things that, if they got out, very easily could be responsible for another calamity. Ergo, the only option at that point was to stop them, and the resultant magical explosion that was involved with that ended up moving the Isle probably somewhere near the Glass Ocean, which is functionally on the opposite side of the world.
Yes, and we're sort of led to believe that this is a sacrifice on the parts of the students. They knew this would probably kill them all, but they did it to stop the Aetherial, or at least Galof. So the students are effectively destroyed. There are still a few people around. You meet a lot of them in End. In fact, all of them, maybe the ones that we know of in End.
I'm pretty sure.
And I was really happy to hear that we're going to be, at least the ruse, but I think we'll see it going forward that we're going to be rebuilding the students.
Yeah, if you go talk to Kryle and Graha in the sort of Baldesion Annex after you finish Endwalker, they make it very clear they're seeking out new jobs, and the whole thing about Baldesion is that they go actively research interesting oddities and stuff like that all throughout the world, and so they'd be a really great grounds for us to go study things in places like the New World or Mericidia. So there's a lot of different ways that they could be used sort of in the back pockets of the developers. The other thing too is, I mean, imagine us going to go study something in Eorzean, right? Like that you had pitched. They would be a great grounds for us to go there, the same way that we get
Makoto?
Makoto, yes. It should be great grounds for, much like how we use Makoto in Boja, for them to use, the new Baldesion to check out, the Eorzean home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a fascinating thing to see. So I also really enjoyed seeing Hori, Balder, and Coltene, and I doubly enjoyed hearing their voices. The fact that there's so much voiced content in this expansion. The fact that Hori and Coltene got some is so cool to me.
Well, and what my hope is that bodes for a greater use of them in the future. Because the thing is, it's very easy to be like, well, they're kind of B tier, or C tier Scions. Maybe they're not really planning to use them in the future. But the thing is, like, Urianger was never meant to be a leading man Scion. A bunch of the Scions did not necessarily start out that way. Arnvald wasn't really a major ass player until the past patch content in a way.
Yeah, I was going to mention Arnvald. Arnvald went from the highest amongst the C tiers to a pretty decent B tier. And I mean, Alize went from a raid NPC to everyone's favorite Scion.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of grounds for Scions who have just been utterly in the background, becoming more on the forefront. And Lord knows we could use some more Rogadin representation.
Yeah, we really could.
I caught that the first time around. I was like, oh, cool, that C tier Scion. And this time around, I was far more delighted to experience that and kind of what it boded and what it meant for the future.
Yeah. I'm always happy to see them more minor Scions, because on my first playthrough of AOR, they just fade into the background so much. But they are cool characters.
Yeah, and because they're not voiced, like you kind of were getting at, it becomes very hard to commit them to memory sometimes.
Yes, it does. What's the other infiltrator? There's Thancred, and then there's he was a Crystal Brave.
Part of me just wants to pull out the one.
Guess what I'm doing?
Fucking go for it then. Awesome. Get the answer to that.
Yeah. Oh, Real Forest.
Real. Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I kind of always liked Real, but it's just so hard to make him memorable when he's not voiced. He doesn't get much content. He's usually just sort of like, if Thancred needs to go somewhere and there's another place that we need to go, he'll go there. So he's just sort of shuffled off.
He's Mr. Spy Guy number 2.
Right. That's the story of Real's life. He's off gathering information.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, in a lot of ways, Thancred was that and a womanizer up until they actually figured out what to do with him.
That's true.
A Realm Reborn. Although, all of the Scions, really, they're not... I don't want to say they're not quite sure what to do with them, but they don't quite have a place for them to go until they do in Heaven's Word.
Yeah, they deflanderize them in Heaven's Word.
That's a really good way of putting it. And it just makes me think, too, of Tataru when you're standing at the landing and how much she's just like worried about literally like the armies of hell are bent on destroying the world, and she's just like, please come back, and you're like, I'll bring them back, I swear.
I know, I love Tataru so much. She's so sweet and such a force of nature that when she really shows her vulnerability, which is not super rare, but it feels really meaningful.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's so easy to default into this character is not hyper useful or hyper around, so I'm not really like, I don't have a lot of connection to them, or I don't care about them that much. I don't think Tataru's super that, because I think she is so front and center and also making things for us that she is useful and around.
Yes.
The fact that she is cared about and cared for by so many people is great. You know, it's great that it's not just the 18 people on the front line trial Scions that are people that are beloved.
Right, exactly, yeah. Tataru, for me at least, I can't speak for everyone, but Tataru has a place up there with the main Scions, with the A-tier Scions.
I feel the same. And I love that there's also room for the people who do not fight to have just as much value. And not just, oh, they're valuable too, but no. These people, the people who do administrative things are just as important and required to get shit done. And they're treated as such, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, we would have probably died about 3 expansions back without Tataru, so...
Yeah. Well, definitely without the coin, we wouldn't have been going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. We just wouldn't have been able to do Stormblood.
We're supposed to go to, Kugane. We can't get a ship. What do we do? I mean, I guess we just, go adventure for a month? You finish that, you come back, it turns out Hien's already been killed. Fist of Ralgar has just been utterly destroyed. Just like, well, I got the gill.
I think we should just have spent 2 expansions trekking across the continents to get to Kugane.
Once you get to the Ruby Sea, you just swim all the way to Kugane. So one of the things moving forward is I wanted to, every time we kind of start touching on a new map, is read off Emmett Selk's dialogue, because I think it's super important, not just for what the map he's describing is, but also him sort of alluding to what's coming next.
Yes, absolutely. Can I just say, I love that they chose Emmett as our narrator.
And it's so brilliant because it serves a secondary function of foreshadowing that it's him.
Yes, exactly.
It's so great because then when he shows up, it makes sense. Which also, jumping way the fuck forwards, Hydaelyn makes a specific note in Labyrinthos to you that she brought Menphilia's soul back to the source, which is important because it actually clearly denotes that the ethereal seas are separate, which makes utter sense. Functionally, the shards are all different stars, ergo they're going to have their own ethereal seas. But it's good to have that sort of confirmed, that if you died on the first, you would go to the ethereal sea of the first. You wouldn't be immediately brought back to the source.
Yeah.
The other thing is she makes a nod of another soul who may be, I don't remember what the exact line is, but she basically refers to her bringing back another soul who may or may not be important depending on our actions. And that other soul is Emmett.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I made a note of that as well. I just can't seem to find it right now. But at first I was like, who could this other soul be? And the thought for me was like, oh, I don't know. It could be. One of the thoughts was Emmett, but then there was thoughts of other shards of us. There's just so many NPCs, meaningful NPCs that we could be thinking about.
Matt from Bellular's channel has done a lot of like really good videos, and one of the things he did that I had also read about was sort of Yoshi P's love for mystery novels and his love for going back and being able to reread something and experiencing it a second time being as or more valuable because of understanding all the connections and foreshadowings.
Yes.
And just the level to which, when I first played through Endwalker, I'm like, okay, there's clearly so much foreshadowing that's really good. Some of it I can see, some of it I can't see. But the amount that playing it a second time, just the little intricate details hidden all over that are connecting to sometimes, big reveals, and other times just small catharsis is...
Those are huge in Endwalker. There's so many of them. Replaying the game a second time, or just watching the cutscenes is sort of a lesson in that kind of storytelling technique.
The way in which they build up Moonbreeda's parents, right? Where that confrontation is coming the entire time, even unto the beginning with Eorzean. It means that by the time it does come around, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is just this story beat that we kind of wanted to hit. Like, it totally would have worked if there was no mention or reference to it before it showed up, when it does in the second half of Labyrinthos.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there is makes it that much better.
Yeah, it just made me weep anyway.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I have no difficulty saying that I am a person who feels a lot of things hard on my sleeve, and I have sometimes a difficulty like physiologically crying, and yet with Endwalker there were tears.
Yeah.
There were plenty of tears. I'm going to read off Emmett's lines real quick, which is, "And so you venture forth into the unknown.
A fate beyond the horizon that cannot be divined. A future undefined and in flux. In uncertain times, naught but the simplest words of wisdom will suffice. That which lives is destined to die. Love leads to loss. Every beginning has an end. Treasure every moment, every step of your descent. And there, in the depths where souls and stars rest,
find your truth." Which is just so good!
It is. I mean, the Souls and Stars thing is very obviously a reference to Ultima Thule, right?
Yeah, and once you know it, it's like, of course.
Yes. Yeah. I love the idea that Emmett has found the ability to take the Unsundered world for what it represents now and enjoy it instead of grieve it constantly. I mean, I'm sure he still is, but...
Well, I had the exact same thought, right? Which is, once you've experienced him in Elpis and experienced his disposition there and the way in which he believes in his world, the way in which he even, argues for death being beautiful, all these things about his position there, and the way in which he can acknowledge the humanity of love leads to loss, every beginning has an end, right? The fact that he's saying this when we get to meet him at the beginning of his journey in Elpis, and the way in which he's unwilling to acknowledge that every beginning does have its end, or when there is an end, it is purely chosen and beautiful. It's, no, there is sorrow, there's tragedy. And it goes along with his claims during Shadowbringers, I've lived among you. And I think there's an amount that a certain amount of humanity has filtered into him.
Yes.
Through his experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You even see it through his indignation of, he's like, I would never become a megalomaniacal madman and build, he claims, he would never have built Amarok, right? I would never grieve my friend. I would just think, their time has come, it's whatever. I wouldn't I wouldn't be, grieving them the whole time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so much to talk about Emmett and Hythlodaeus and Venat, and just, Elpis is so good. And we will talk about that in length, I'm sure.
We'll get there. There's literally an entire episode dedicated just to Elpis. So we will definitely get there. But this kind of really sets up one thing I love about Endwalker, but is also, and it's not that it's heavy-handed, but it is so clear, and that is how much Endwalker at many, many points kind of clearly states out its thesis questions and statements.
Yes.
at many different points, through many different character perspectives and lenses, does it pose the sort of fundamental ideas, right? That love leads to loss. Every beginning has its end. Treasure every moment. Where do you find your value in a universe that is arbitrary?
Yes.
Do you give in to despair because the universe is without meaning? Or do you choose to take value in the journey and find meaning from that rather than anything that is truly inherent?
Yeah. I mean, it really has actually extremely clear theses, themes. It would be great to teach it to like a high school English class, but
Absolutely no. I think if you wanted to if you wanted to explain the fundamental notions of like existentialism and nihilism and like a lot of that stuff, you could do a hell of a lot worse of engaging with people than showing them this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not that I don't think there's clear themes throughout like Heaven's Ward and Stormblood. I think there certainly is, but I think Endwalker delivers them to you clearly, but not sort of expositorily, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because it so focuses on delivering you them through the different lenses of each character.
Yes.
I
mean, Xenos being a primary sort of example of this.
Right. I think in another way, you get it through Hermes and Amon being two different characters with different reactions to the sort of nihilistic understanding of the universe, despite being technically the same soul. And so the fact that even within one quote unquote quotation mark here character, you have two separate perspectives. And then you even have that moment sort of a little bit later on in Thavnair where you're standing there with Thancred, Urianger, and Estinian, and they're all kind of giving their own experience and view on the struggles and tragedies of life and how it's still worth it, but each through their own sort of lens, with Estinian being a little pragmatic and a little bit laconic, but acknowledging of woes and tragedies and also the value of continuing on, with Urianger being a lot more not just like blindly optimistic or anything, but just like more of a source of hope, and with Thancred still heavily weighed down with things like the loss of Minfilia, having to leave Reen, like a lot of other things where he has borne a lot of pain that he does not even know how to fully let go of, and yet even he still fully believes in the value of the journey and of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for Urianger, and I'm sure that we'll discuss this more when we get to the Moon episode, but
yes,
they sort of, Urianger's been a complex character with his motivations for a while. I mean, they did that whole patch, was it Soul Surrender, where they make him out to be a villain, and they sort of they try to sort of twist it on you again, that they take this mistrust that you could provoke when he's like working with the Loporrit, but they twist it and they sort of demonstrate how he's actually an incredibly hopeful, incredibly optimistic, loving person.
In some ways, I would argue the most of the Scions.
Yeah, I think so. At least explicitly in this expansion, we got a lot of that, like the loving aspect of Thancred in the in Shadowbringers. We got plenty of Lys for all of her flaws, at least in the eyes of the fandom. In Stormblood, Ishtola also was, I think humanized quite a good bit in Shadowbringers as well. But this was sort of, for me, in terms of humanization, was a really good one for Urianger.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in the past, and I don't know if it actually made it into the final of anything. I think it might have actually been an after hours talk. But Urianger has always been one of my favorites in a way that's been hard to explain. So I've always been predisposed to see a lot of its warmth. But you're right in that there are much smaller shards throughout. I think the one that's the most explicit prior to Endwalker would be his moment with Reen in Shadowbringers. When you're in Amarang.
Yeah. Shadowbringers was Urianger's bimboification, and then Endwalker was his humanization. So
yes, yeah. It's one of those things where the different people are going to experience a character differently depending on their own dispositions. So even if there are fragments, or even if there are lots of ways to point towards a character being one way, if they're more subtle and you're not predisposed to be either giving a shit or trusting of a character, it's hard for that to matter until it's seen more explicitly.
Right, yes.
So kind of then the next step would be sort of getting on the boat. One thing I love is you get on the boat, it immediately cuts, right? After sort of Emmett's little dialogue bit, and it immediately cuts so that they can make sure that they can make it the time of day that they want it to be. Because when you go topside, it is always just hitting morning with the stars beginning to fade.
Yeah.
And I love that they pace that cutscene specifically because they, one, want it so that when they pan up at the end, you can see the moon still. But two, because there's this sort of way in which the fading of night into dawn is super representative of kind of like Venat and thematically appropriate.
Yeah, and I mean just of Endwalker in general. I mean a powerful theme within the expansion is the end of things, or a new dawns, new beginnings, and the ending that comes to each beginning. So the fact that we begin in sort of a new beginning, a new dawn, and we see the stars fading away, we see the past fading away, I think is meaningful.
Absolutely. Well, and then you even think about the Japanese name for Endwalker is Getsu no Finale. It's something. It's basically the Moonlight Dawn finale.
Right. Okay.
And the way in which Yoshi P states he thinks about A Realm Reborn as a new dawn, Heaven's Word as the blue skies of sort of like day, Stormblood sort of the blood red of a dusk sky, and then Shadowbringers as the true night.
Yes, yeah, and then that would of course make Endwalker the new dawn.
The thing I love too, going back to our earlier points about the way in which Endwalker constantly celebrates and has refrains, of prior expansions, is literally the song you hear is the Answers Reprise, which I don't know if we've heard in the MSQ since the Fall of Dalamud. I know that like you hear it in when they did the holiday event with New Year's events, right? Like when you like saw Yoshi P. Like, I know that it's popped up in like things like that, but and it may have popped up in the MSQ and I'm just forgetting it. But the first time Answer Reprise ever showed up, right, was during 1.0 as Dalamud began to fall.
Yeah, I think it was the finale event song, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know that if you were around in like the final days before Dalamud was falling, you could even just hear it in the open world.
Yeah. I think that is correct. It might pop up in Coil. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, you might be right. I definitely know that obviously Answers does, and versions of Answers pop up throughout Coil. I might totally do that. Do you think Sharlayan is... I always say Sharlayan because it looks like Sharlayan, and some characters have said Sharlayan, but throughout Endwalker they use Sharlayan. So I'm going to commit to trying to say Sharlayan. Do we think Sharlayan is only a day voyage away, since it seems like you're supposed to canonically start at night, if we go by the trailer, and arrive at dawn?
So I think the way that the story shows you it does seem like it was a day. Like the way it's framed, the whole early rise thing. But for sort of from a world perspective, it doesn't seem quite right to me. But I'm happy to hand wave that. I think narratively it probably took a day.
The answer is don't worry about it.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised how many people were on the boat. I mean, Sharlayan isn't an isolationist country. It's never been. Not really.
There's the line they have right before when you get on there that it's an island nation, it can't survive alone, so it's not truly in isolation.
Right, exactly, yeah. But I was still surprised to, at least at that point, having not experienced Sharlayan, to see the sheer amount of people, because it's a pretty busy ship. And I was also surprised to see so many people from Limsa, because although they're open to other countries, they seem to do most of their trade with a specific few. But then again, I suppose trade flows through Limsa, so.
Yeah, and we don't know how many people on the ship might be, workers, which obviously I don't think they're supposed to be coded workers underneath the decks. But the thing, too, is you could argue we don't really see Gleeners despite their importance to Sharlayan throughout all our journeys. So there's a way in which you could just point to a lot of elements of Sharlayan just didn't pre-exist because they didn't exist yet.
Yeah,
within the world, and now we may see. I mean, now we're obviously going to see more interaction with Sharlayan because they just their grounds for isolationism, as it has been the past 260 odd years, is gone. So even if they're still more prone to being avoidant of all forms of conflict, they're still going to be far more engaged with everything going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Gleeners make sense. It's easily hand waveable because they're probably not like super explicit to people they come across about their like function, if you know what I mean.
No, I mean, the only difficulty is that they have a specific wardrobe, but the thing is you could also look at them and be like, okay, hey, maybe there's 200 Gleeners in all of Sharlayan, and it's a big fucking world. So it's like, okay, you just never ran across them. I would say, I would love if they pulled an alpha with Aramval and made it so, like, if you go to different places around the world, you could see him doing his Gleener duties. Like, that would be really cool.
I would love that.
That'd be a really great little touch. Or just any Gleener, just seeing Gleeners around the world just as, like, a small thing.
Yes.
So, actually, I mentioned the trailer, and one thing I wanted to cover was the trailer for Endwalker, not just the literal trailer, which we should totally talk about, but the sort of gameplay trailer that arrived a couple weeks right before the game came out. And the fact that they chose to open it with footfalls, with the song from Ultima Thule.
Yes.
And I heard that song for the first time. I played the trailer. I remember I was sitting in the car. I played that trailer, and the song immediately made me cry. Like I didn't know. It wasn't like I was familiar with it, or obviously the game wasn't out. I hadn't played it yet, but it immediately just felt right, felt emotional, and felt powerful. And then the trailer was brilliant. But the fact that then when I want to talk about this more in detail when we get there, obviously, but the fact that then when I got to Ultima Thule and you hear a couple notes in the background and you hear through the fog just bits and pieces of it, and the fact that I immediately knew what it was, like I got out of the gym and I immediately knew what it was for me so much more powerful than if I had never heard it before.
I see that.
Which, yeah, everyone's gonna have different experience of that, right? So, like, I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, I fucking hate this song. Like, they're lunatics, they're absolute madmen, and they're wrong. They're objectively wrong. but it just was a very powerful thing to have a connection to this trailer, and then at the beginning of my journey, and then have it come full circle at the end, which is what, in a lot of ways, Ultima Thule is about.
That's true. They sort of created a little narrative journey for us there, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. The other thing I like about that trailer is that it seems to canonically imply that Ul'dah is the starting city. And I started in Ul'dah, so I'm like, haha.
Tiama Limsa Liminson.
Yeah.
Through and through. Although actually Niniri is Ul'dah.
Yep. Oh, well, there you go. I mean, there's an argument to be said that the reason they show Ul'dah is actually just because the poster child is Paladin, ergo the class to pick for that would be Ul'dah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they're getting at. And I feel pretty strongly that Ul'dah makes a lot of sense as the canonical starting city, because I think a relationship with Thancred makes a lot of sense going into Realm Reborn.
Yeah, definitely. Then again, one with Y'shtola does it, and if you're starting in Gridania, then I think the end of a Realm Reborn is also more impactful to you.
I think the end of a Realm Reborn and I think the end of 3.5 is definitely more impactful if you've done Gridania. I think your connection to Y'shtola is going to be greater with those. My argument for Thancred's relationship mattering is that because you get reintroduced to Y'shtola in Heavensward, you basically get to really have a ground zero time with her. Like you get even more of a really getting to know her there. And the thing is that Yida not basically being alive means that you get a full reintroduction to Lys, and you never really get a full time with Papalymo.
You don't really need it, as sad as it makes me.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the side quest where you get to talk to his father.
Yeah. Oh, I had to go and do that. That's the first thing I did after I did the MSQ. Was do that side quest.
Oh,
I loved it. I loved that they gave us that call, because I was a little bit like, the Moan Breeder stuff was extremely impactful, but I really want something for Papalymo. I know that it was very minor. They did give it us.
I think it's the right nod too, right? Because I don't know how you put that in. Like the Moon Breeder thing makes sense because there's a line of a thing that has never been fully feels like addressed and finished off, both in Urianger's love for her and like having a catharsis around that. The way in which like Thancred got one for Minfilia, right?
Right. If we had Lys with us, it would have made sense to do that for Papalymo, but we didn't.
Right, absolutely. And I love how, and the thing I really like about that side quest is actually how small and quiet it is in a way, because if you really care about the story, that side quest becomes very powerful. And if you don't, it's like, okay, you missed it. It's fine.
Yeah. That's exactly it, man. I was looking at a poll on the Reddit, on the subreddit, the other day, and it was about favorite Scions, and Papalymo was at the bottom. So when I was doing that quest, I was sort of like, this is just for us fans. This is just for the ones who appreciate him.
This is just for the ones who voted Papalymo.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's hard because I think his death is impactful. I think it's well done. I think his role makes a lot of sense. I don't know that forcibly having him around would have been in any way better, but also I wish that he could have had a moment where he got his full due, other than just being the greatest student of Louisoix.
Yeah. I would have loved if the Skolok talked about him a little bit.
Yeah,
when you talked to
absolutely.
him. But I liked it. I was grateful for the mention for the side quest, and then sort of moving back to the ship. Then we go on to meet what I think is, for me, the standout. Well, you kind of meet her. It's kind of not her, but you meet the standout new character of the expansion.
She really is definitely one of, if not the absolute standout. And the fact that they managed to functionally make a character who was introduced in the prior patch, and not even actually introduced in the prior patch. Like, Emmett Selk had more of an introduction pre-Shadowbringers than Venat did in a way. And then that she's such a rousing success in my mind throughout.
She's a huge success, and it seems to have played well with the with everybody playing the game as well. They seem to love her.
Yeah. And actually, to sort of the thing that you were kind of pointing out a little bit, I actually at some point want to sit down and talk about how Hydaelyn isn't Venat in a way, and how it's important to distinguish that this is going to also fuel into the Amon Hermes conversation. I think we'll probably just address it.
I was about to bring Amon up in this context, yeah.
Yeah, is that it's really important to understand the ways in which Venat, I mean, literally, yes, is Hydaelyn, but the way in which 10,000 years spending that time as a deity and not being afforded any of your humanity and basically being alone, carrying the weight of existence on your shoulders is going to affect you. And ergo, you really see the difference between the person you meet in Elpis and who they were, and Hydaelyn, and how that is a different character. And I think that is a thing that is in some ways subtle. I think if you're someone who's predisposed to look for that stuff, it's like glaringly like in your face. But I think if you're just kind of taking the story at face value, it's very easy to miss that sort of undertone.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because Venat has been holding the breach. She's been standing at Thermopylae for millennia to save us. This is sort of a weird cut, but I like the SCP content. You know, the way.
Oh, I love SCP.
I was reading one of the anti-memetic articles the other day, and it was there's a line in it. It's something like, we haven't been winning, we've been losing, but losing as slow as we possibly can to hold off for everyone. And that's just very Venat for me.
It is very Venat, and the thing is, I was about to tie it. So there's an idea that Tolkien has, right? That is throughout his works, and that is the idea of fighting the long defeat. And that is, like, in Arda, in Tolkien's universe, or in Tolkien's world, magic decreases as a function of time. All the cool shit in Middle-earth and Arda and all that stuff happened long before the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings is like this dying gasp of magic, and before literally magic's just out the window, it's just gone. And that's why the elves are leaving. It's going to just be an age of man. Friggin' the Silmarillion, you're seeing mountain-sized dragons and ships sailing through the sky. It's all sorts of crazy shit.
I mean, I have my thoughts about the Unsundered as Numenorians.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are total parallels there. But the thing being that idea of fighting long defeat, right? That there is a value and a grace in the doing of an action, even if it only slows the inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Is I think super tied to Hydaelyn's.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a slight difference in that Hydaelyn is fighting a long defeat that she knows she cannot win, but there is a hope that it may someday be overturned. So it's not just an inevitability. It's only inevitable that the confrontation will come.
Yes.
It's inevitable that the Endsinger will, at some point, bring about her doom, unless mankind can choose to face it, not because they will win, but because they choose to fight, whether they win or lose.
Yeah, I was I know that you know that this is one of my favorite speeches in the game, but the speech that Thancred gives to Reen and to Minfilia about how proud he is of them and how they've grown. I sort of love to look at that as sort of like to think about that as Venat looking at us as well.
Yes. Yep.
She has such pride in us. I mean, it doesn't even feel patronizing. I was really worried that. Well, I wasn't worried, but I was thinking it would probably come out at least sort of in Shadowbringers that Hydaelyn would be sort of patronizing. You know, not evil. I wasn't ever really a huge proponent of the Hydaelyn is evil theory, but
yeah, but a certain amount of infantilizing, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. I was even worried about that upon just even if she was warm, a certain amount of that within the confines of Endwalker.
Yeah,
and I think that they very deftly managed that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the mechanics of Zodiac being rejoined was weakening Hydaelyn, as if her strength was being specifically drawn from the act of having sundered, the sunderedness, the fragmentation of the star.
My read on that was that her strength is being afforded to the barrier upon the moon. Ergo, the stronger Zodiac became, the more she had to afford to the maintaining of it.
Right, that makes sense.
And even by the time of his defeat, she's already grown too weak, and now she's also trying basically her best to prevent Medion's song from breaking through. So she's even then not like just able to be like, well, I can now just go all out.
Yes, exactly.
I guess for my money, that had been kind of my assumption, but I'm not sure I could tell you why that had been like my assumption.
I kind of see that though.
Yeah, that also makes me think though, does Hydaelyn know about our time on the first because she was able to witness us through like Minfilia and stuff? Or does she know about our time on the first because we tell her as Venat? Like there's parts of her knowledge that I wonder how much comes from us telling her about our journeys versus her able to be aware of it through other means.
So just remind me your take on this. I remember the way it was specifically phrased was that it wasn't necessarily specifically dying, it was upon entering the Ethereal Sea in full that you gain your memories of past events that you've lost.
Montache, basically, the way he describes it is that when you return to the Ethereal Sea, your soul is basically cleansed, and that you regain them. I
wonder if there's an aspect of that with Hydaelyn.
Oh,
that's where she lives, right? Essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So but do you think that she would have ever had forgotten though? Like, because I just think that she witnessed. So we're on the first, right? So like we go to the first in Shadowbringer.
Right.
How does Hydaelyn witness us being there?
I think I mean, I don't want to say I think she's omnipresent. She's certainly not omniscient, but I think she probably has a pretty high degree, even without her vessels that we find on the first. She probably has a fairly high degree of ability to observe a world.
Especially, it seems to be like us with the Blessing of Light, and probably anyone with the Echo, the way in which she can connect to Kryl, right?
Right.
It just made me think, because like either way is fine, right? Either way is, she was able to because of Minfilia, or because we have the Echo, or because of... But the fact that she was so aware of our time on the first in our revelations just made me wonder, was it because we had told her, because we have that moment in Elpis where we're standing over near-ish, Catesis, and, we're telling her of all our stories and all our times. And I really wonder how much we told her. Because we also, before that then, we're sitting at the table with Emmett and Hythlodaeus and tell her all about those. We explicitly know she knows about what Emmett Self did in our time on the first because of that.
Right. So my read on that was that she knows a very vague sort of overview from the discussion with Emmett and Hythlodaeus of the MSQ, essentially. Probably skipping over, like, we probably don't tell her about that time that we fought Garuda and had to go and get an airship to go fight her. If you know what I mean. We're probably talking like...
Yes.
We're recounting the final cutscenes of each patch. And I also think that a lot of what we told her when we were on the bridge above Catesis is essentially trying to just impart from her some stories of beauty and of hardship and all of that of our world. Not necessarily the mundanity, the story of our life.
Yeah, and I think in a way, though, you could also argue it is telling her about the mundanities as well, in
Right.
that, in a way, it doesn't matter what we told her, it's just the life-affirming aspect of the journey, right? Is we're telling her about our journey to this point, regardless of which parts we're telling her about.
Yes, I agree.
That makes me then think too about, she has multiple lines that are very interesting, which is, a conjunction has begun to form, an intertwining of your time and mine. And that's obviously alluding to when we're going to Elpis, right? Like, she knows that's coming.
I suppose it is, and it's also maybe a reference to the fact that Meteon's influence is beginning to increase, or will. It depends on how much she knows, right? Is she aware that Fandaniel's plan is this close to releasing Zodiac?
I feel the way in which she arrives onto you in Silver Tier at the end of 5.55, and the way in which she's talking about darkness, to me very clearly, or not very clearly, I think, my read on that is that she knows the final days are coming, because by the time you arrive to her in Elpis, you tell her that you're facing doom. And I feel like she knows that by the point where the reason that she shows up Silver Tier for the first time is because she knows the end game has begun.
I think there is definitely a sense of that, yeah.
But you're right in that that is a certain amount of conjecture, and that is not entirely clear. We do know that she knows you're going to go back at some point. And we know that you're going to go back sometime before you find out about Meteon, right? And so you are going, then you tell her what you've done up until that point to some amount, to some extent. It's not even clear how much you tell her about your events during Endwalker. So she may even literally know near precisely when you'll come back, depending on what you've told her.
At the very least, she knows that we're going back post Shadowbringers.
Yes. And the fact that she says a conjunction has begun to form, I wonder how much of that is just saying, oh, I know you're going to go back, right? Like, knowing that a link between these two moments is coming. And how much of that is, oh no, there is a very specific momentous conjunction that is about to be formed. I wonder how much of it is sort of an idle, this thing is going to happen, versus this thing that could only happen now is going to happen now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true, because we tell her about the Crystal Tower and about we probably tell her about Elidibus' summoning of heroes from other spaces and times, and the fact that Graha has summoned us from across a different shard. But she knows, of course, from Reen probably, but she knows that we now have the tools to go back to Elpis.
Yeah, which I feel like we could have an entire lore talk just conveying and explaining the magnitude and tragedy and interest around the function by which we go to Elpis.
Yeah.
Around with Lidibus and everything. I mean, that's not... I actually think explaining time travel in 14 is actually remarkably consistent and pretty easy to do. It's just that there are... The important thing to understand about time travel in 14 is not that time travel has no rules. It's that there are very much are rules, but it is a universe in which the multiple forms of time travel can exist. So there are both the branching theory timeline, time travels, and fixed loop timeline. Like, both of those are possible depending on the methodology by which you travel.
Right, yes. Right, so I also, I have in my notes here, I made this note, because I have my notes here up that I made while playing through, and then I've got some notes I've added on. And I have, what is Hydaelyn / Venat's ancient promise? And then right next to it in block capitals I have, it was to us!
Yep. I literally, that's what I had next to, is like a promise made in another time, in another age.
Yeah. The foreshadowing, of course, is on point in this expansion.
Right. And it's that thing where even when you're playing the first time, you clearly know this is foreshadowing something, but you can't scrutinize it very much, right? Like, when you're just starting your adventure, so there's so much left to discover elsewhere. So by the time you arrive in Elpis, you might have forgotten that she said anything at all. But
yeah,
once you know, it all makes so much sense.
Yes, it does. Everything starts to fall into place.
Also, she has another line which you pointed out to me that I noticed too, but it just gets me every time, about the traveler's heart.
Yeah, so she says that we've got a traveler's heart and that we're going to enjoy seeing this new land, which I think could also be a call forward to Elpis, but obviously it's referencing Sharlayan obliquely.
Yes. And
this is the traveler's heart is a very obvious reference to Azem, very, very clearly.
And the two in the mantles that both of you shared. Think about there's so many parts to Venat's choices and sacrifices that are tragic. One of the most pure tragedies in a way is her sacrificing her ability to travel and explore
Yeah, that's a good point.
in order to be the guardian of life. And
Yeah.
how much that she sacrificed in a way every part of herself.
She did. I mean, you know the cutscene, right, where she's it's when you've left Elpis, you see her wandering around Amaron and saving people,
Yes.
killing the ones who are trying to sort of re-empower Zodiac and all that. And then she keeps walking. She's covered in blood. She's covered in specific black fluid. But that cutscene never ended for Venat.
No,
she
was
kept
walking
on
the
that
entire
journey.
way.
Yeah, she kept on that fight for 10,000 years after that.
Yeah, she's just constantly accruing more and more of, whether you want to see it as literal blood, metaphoric despair, but just garnering more and more of it on her. But she never ceased marching forward, believing with utter certainty that there was hope, that despair could be fought, and that despite all of their pain, their sacrifices, their veniality, their failings, their foils, that humanity was able to be the hope that could break through. In a way, they could be more than the ancients were because of their ephemerality.
And I think something that's particularly tragic. I mean, we knew, of course, that Venat was a being of the Unsundered World. We've known since a few patches into Shadowbringers. But it's more sort of a visceral revelation in this expansion to realize that this whole time, her sort of feud against the Scions, she's not fighting nameless villains. She's fighting her friends, her colleagues, the closest people to her in her time.
And who she's, in a sense, not even necessarily ideologically opposed to, she's forcibly opposed to them, right?
Yeah.
Because they're of their tempering and because of her knowledge of Medion.
Right.
It's doubly tragic because it's not just this light versus darkness. It's this, I don't even know what to call it, this seminal tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, the Sundering, I suppose you could call it the seminal tragedy of Aetherius.
Yeah, absolutely. I will have much and more, and we both will, to talk about that entire scene, and they shall walk.
Right.
And I'll try not to scream loudly with my emotions.
Yeah, I was about to go into a big talk about They Shall Walk as well, but I'll save that for the relevant episode.
There are just so many cathartically hard-hitting moments in Endwalker.
Yeah, there are. And bittersweet moments.
Yes. It's so powerfully bittersweet. That's the thing, is how many moments are sweet and bitter and painful and joyous and sorrowful. Not to cast too far forward, and I won't go into it too much, but the moment in which you get to recognize Venat's humanity and she cries. The moment that for the first time in basically 10,000 years, she gets to be recognized as herself and in her final moments, and she cries, right? Just ugh. And while also maintaining her role as Hydaelyn, right? Like, within that moment, she still gets to tell you that her love will always be with you, like my children, because you still are. You are the one individual who gets to really be the friend of Venat while still the child of Hydaelyn. But she has guided you and all of your kind all this time. To that earlier point, we're talking about her, deigning you, her children, doesn't feel like an infantilizing mother knows best or anything. It's purely I have done all I can to foster your growth and to guide you, and I believe in you, and you are now on your own, but I will always be with you, and I believe in all of you.
Yeah, I mean, they shall walk.
Yeah, they shall walk. So we arrive at Sharlayan, and we get Emmett's bit on that, which is Sharlayan, the solitary nation
of the northern seas, where under the watchful gaze of Thaliak, patron deity of scholars, academics hoard all manner of knowledge and secrets. Once, they deigned to accept foreign students into a distant colony maintained in the Dravanian hinterlands. How swiftly they abandoned it once the first Garlean boot set hostile foot on Alamegan soil. So averse to the prosecution of war, these men of wisdom, your
would-be allies.
Yeah, so I mean, I love this as an introduction to Sharlayan, because to anyone that's been paying real attention to the story, Sharlayan is a complex setting. We've known this since at least Heaven's Ward.
And in some ways, some of its actions have seemed idiosyncratic, even.
Yeah, definitely.
Which 5.5 does try to draw a clear arrow towards.
It does, and 5.5 and the Endwalker itself explains it partially with the revelation they found at the crystal, not the crystal tower, sorry, the anti-tower.
Yes,
and sort of additional
it totally
rationale.
explains it. Yeah, and their idiosyncrasies and all of that is very well explained throughout Endwalker. But going into Endwalker, you're like, okay, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. I mean, delving into Sharlayan's secrets is an extremely interesting part of this game, of this expansion.
And the thing is also, like most map dialogue should, it serves very well to, if you haven't really been paying close attention to Sharlayan and who they are and what they're about, it does a really good job of encapsulating the things you need to know real quickly.
Yeah, it does. It tells you that they're sort of an academic nation, that they're a little secretive, that they quit Eorzean when the Garleans invaded, and that they're pacifist-ish.
Yeah, to an extent. And so it gives you a good little history lesson if you don't know it. If you kind of remember it, it gives you a good refresher. And if you do know it, you're just over there in the corner rubbing your hands together like, haha, they mentioned Thaliak.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, the callback to Thaliak is nice. It is nice. So, something I really found interesting talking about Thaliak was the Nymphae, right? The water spirits that are honored in Sharlayan. Let me know if I missed something with this. We don't get much more explanation regarding them, do we?
No, I'm actually, in some ways, particularly shocked by the things we don't learn about Sharlayan through side quests or people's dialogue. Right. I think there's a metric fuck ton of things that we do learn. There's also a lot of things about them that we have yet to learn. Obviously, we know far, far more now than we did, pre-Endwalker. But there's still, I think, room for... I hope there are more side quests added with patch content.
Yeah.
I think that would do a lot. And this is just a little side note that has no relevance to the MSQ, but if you go talk to... I'm forgetting the name of the library, but if you go into the library and you talk to... ask them to read some of the books, one of the books actually tells you that the name of Idyllshire used to be Emporium. So that was what it was called when it was before Idyllshire took over and before they left, which does not matter, but I cared.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm a big history buff, so the fact that it just to explain to the viewers if they don't know, Emporiums, which was a plural, it was a name for a certain type of colony of the ancient Greeks. They found them all across the Mediterranean, and actually beyond the Mediterranean. But they were essentially served as trading outposts, and there were some that were specifically called Emporium. There was one in Spain, northern Spain, northern Spain, that was specifically called Emporium as the name of its city. So it's just a callback again to the Greek origin. It's a really, really nice sort of through line that they keep bringing up at every chance they get.
Yeah, and the ways in which Sharlayan is supposed to be the removed nation, but while Eorzea is sort of Western Europe in a broad sense, then makes it all the more fitting.
Yeah.
That also really... I only picked up on this the second time around, but one of the things that Graha gets at in later on after Labyrinthos is that the purpose for New Sharlayan after the study of the Anti-Tower, right? One of the big purposes for it, and the reason it kept growing, was because they were funneling all the funds for the building of Labyrinthos, and the Aetian Scope, which is technically speaking, that's a retcon in terms of obviously they didn't plan that ahead of time, but it's not a retcon in terms of any of the information in game, and makes absolute sense. It makes makes total sense. Oh, of course, that's why they would have actually welcomed in students from faraway land.
Yeah.
It's because they use the funds to build the Aetioscope.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I mean this is pointed out by Graha, but I think in Sharlayan's defense, I do kind of see Sharlayan, and I think this is sort of evidenced by the Archons by Graha, that Sharlayan, you can, if you're intelligent enough, just go and become a Sharlayan, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree. That is definitely my read. I don't have a specific person to reference that because Graha was kind of a weird example where he was brought to this school of Baldesion as a baby, or kid, in his very, very young life. The fact that there are other members of the Y tribe who don't seem to exist in Sharlayan, the fact that I do think very much it's not quite a meritocracy, but it is meritorious. And while the past maybe 50 years, it's become harder and harder to become a student there, I do absolutely think anyone from the outside can become a student.
Yeah, I think if you want to look at like the great academic melting pots of the world, I mean, look at Alexandria, for example. Specifically the Egyptian Alexandria. It is a vastly multicultural city. You see people coming there to study at the library and to become sort of philosophers, poets, scholars in residence in the city. And I think a similar thing is there in Sharlayan. If you get a student visa, you get a citizenship, essentially, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, functionally, it seems like it. The other thing I'll say, too, and this is partly a joke, but very serious, is the fact that Viera are represented in their population as much as they are, to me, especially male Viera, suggests... And if you've played the Sage questline, it's clear that it's not just like, oh, they have a healthy population of male Viera that have been there for hundreds of years. Like, no, there are people who have come there as first-generation male Viera, to me, tells me that they are definitely still welcoming of new people.
I agree. I think it's a really fun cutscene.
Yeah. And I think it does a lot to convey disposition of quite a few Sharlayans without casting them in a we are stern dicks light, which I think, obviously, before you understand Foreshadowings and the forum's motivations, which is a whole thing I want to talk about in and of itself at some point, but before you understand that, it's very easy to just be like, oh, Sharlayan are just dicks, because your experience with Foreshadowings is just, what the fuck? Like, even if you are in the right, what the fuck? That was utterly unnecessary.
Yeah. It's a good point, and I think that she does a good job of typifying the Sharlayan political ideology without villainizing it. Let's say, actually, much. She does judge us for being adventurers, but she doesn't deny us entry unfairly. We're allowed in.
No, they are somewhat stern. They're not even necessarily just stern. What I would say is that Sharlayans as a whole tend towards being serious, right? Especially those in any form of position of not just authority, but responsibility, is that they take everything very seriously. And they are also, as much as they are devoted to knowledge, they can be wary of anything that could be perceived as a threat. And that makes them tend towards a certain amount of suspicion. But like you say, I think they are also incredibly fair. And I think you can even see that with the fact that when Foreshadowings catches Graha and comes down to get you in Labyrinthos, right? He's not like, you're fucking on a ship, get gone. You're like, no. We're going to the forum. We're going to address this. You still get a trial. So I think they are, whatever you want to say of them, I think inarguably fair would be, I think, a broadly applicable thing. I mean, obviously not in every case with every person, but broadly.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The only thing that in that scene that kept coming into my mind was there's this one line in American Gods, which is, don't fuck with them bitches in airports. And I was just thinking... right, so so just to keep on with this conversation, so obviously Valino, Estinian's true
I was
surname.
yes, that was my next note as well. Have we ever seen that anywhere else?
So the weird thing is, I can't think of any point that we have, but it sounds familiar to me.
Right, that is exactly what I thought. The other thing, I wonder if he said it in the 5.x patch content. The other thing, though, is I even went to check EE1, Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 1, and it says Wormblood in there. It says Estinian Wormblood even in there. So that I don't know if I would necessarily just say it's a recent addition, but I can't wait. I need to repick back up the replay of all the expansions because I wonder if like it is actually obliquely like said in Heaven's Word, but it just hasn't been in so long that we forgot about it.
I wonder if it's said in the Dragoon questline.
That's possible, but I feel like, especially with how he's portrayed there, that's where you're most likely to see him called Wormblood in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And basically, my notes after that for the next bit are just Estinian is a bad liar and not a quick thinker. Sir Taciturn, which is a great fucking line.
Sir Taciturn was good.
I love the rapport between Kryl and Estinian.
Yeah, Kryl really. I mean, I really enjoyed Kryl in both Shadowbringers and in Stormblood, but I think Kryl had a really, really good expansion in this expansion.
I do too, and my genuine, sincere hope is that she becomes like a regular Scion.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if she can because she has too much responsibility with Baldesion, but I would still much rather her be, the more of her, the better, in broadly speaking.
Yeah.
And I also just for the first time have been playing through Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 3 and 5, which Kryl is a reference to Final Fantasy 5.
Yes.
But the other thing is I hadn't realized is that her outfit is a reference to one of the classes from.
It's her White Mage outfit, isn't it?
White Mage, yes, it is the White Mage outfit from some of those. And so I had always just been like, I don't know what's up with this Pikachu-looking outfit, but okay. At first it was like, and then over time it was like, okay, no, I love this, I appreciate this. It doesn't detract from Kryl. But when I now understand it's a Final Fantasy, not quite staple, obviously, but like it is a deep cut reference. It's a lot more okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate this rather than accepting it.
Yeah, in early Final Fantasy games, they love to put ears either on the White Mage class or on a similar class to the White Mage, like the Sage, or I actually don't know if the Sage has them, but in Final Fantasy 3 they have them, of course. At least the women have them, and it does pop up from time to time. I want to say that they appear in 6, but I can't say that with any confidence.
Yeah, it's been so. The 2D ones are not my strongest. 4 was the only game of the 2D ones that I could speak with any authority on because I think it was my first. I don't know if it was my first Final Fantasy, but it was either my first Final Fantasy or my first 2D Final Fantasy.
Yeah, 6 is my favorite Final. Well, no, obviously 14 is, but 6 is definitely up there. It's in second or third spot. 9 might be in second.
I have committed myself to not treating Final Fantasy MMOs, comparing their stories to the single player ones.
I agree.
My argument being that they're so fundamentally different in format and the methodology by which they can accomplish their stories that I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Yeah, that's why I just sort of instinctively didn't include it.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite by far, my favorite Final Fantasy beyond 14 is 10. It will always be.
10 is really good.
Which I could speak for a long period of time about the ways in which I love 10, but also the ways in which I think I see a lot of people utterly misunderstand or misread certain things about it, and the amount to which I hate the internet for making a meme out of the laugh, despite that scene literally supposed to be a moment of someone forcibly laughing in a bad way in order to make someone else who's going on basically a suicide mission feel better. It's like internet context.
I mean, we've got plenty to talk about in FF14 about people misrepresenting certain things in the story.
Hello, my name is Xenos. So then we kind of get into, you arrive at the Baldesion Annex. And one of the things I love about that is all the art on the walls are all concept art or things that are from Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 1.
Yes.
It's funny because I arrived there and I'm like, oh, I know all this art. I know all this art. I know exactly what it's referencing. And then one of my partners who was playing next to me was like, I have no idea what any of this is.
I had the same thought. I thought, oh, I know all this, but I bet it's super cool for people that don't.
Well, and on top of that, I kind of missed this the first time through, but Kryl or Graha, one of them kind of really implies that all this art is not just like, oh, here's cool, backdrop. It's like, oh, no, these are related to things that the Baldesion Annex was sent to go study. So it makes sense that you see images of the Crystal Tower, of the sort of like Eureka weapons, of, even like Garuda, just like, so it's, oh, no, this serves a purpose and a function tied to Baldesion.
Yeah. Yeah, on the way to the Annex, I was really excited by conversation points. I think they're a great addition to the game.
Oh my god, yeah, it's one of those things where, like Trust, I hope they get added retroactively backwards. I don't think they will, because that seems like a lot, and also you kind of want to design the story with them in mind. But at the same time, there's such a really smart addition. The other thing is if you look at systems like the Trust system, right, which is it's good in Shadowbringers and a great idea and an awesome thing, but Endwalker really did step it up with the interactions, the way the NPCs work, the way in which everyone reacts to things, and the personalities. And so I think there's a long history of kind of Dev Team 3 of Yoshi and team instituting an idea and then refining it as a course of time. So I'm super excited to see what they do to sort of refine that system and improve and build on that system in 7.0.
Yeah. I do think, as much as I love that, I do think there is room for improvement with it. I think they could almost take it further, make it more like hide lore in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff like that. Because
they do a little bit.
They do a little bit, not as much as I was hoping they would do, but they do a little bit. So, also, the fact that the part of Sharlayan is called the Agora is interesting to me, right? Because I put this together when I was playing through. So we know that at least part of the ship that sailed to found Sharlayan was Amdapori.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've just done our lore talk on Amdapor. Please go listen to it. And in Amdapor City, the first area that you get to when you sort of clear the initial sort of stairs and houses is the Agora. And I sort of just think it's probably just a follow through from the Sharlayan, Sharlayan Amdapori.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you could try to look at that, because you get into the whole thing of, at least when you have talking about Alag, right? Like you have a specific route, whereas when you look at Grecian routes and how they're used throughout 14, it is very much feels like it's like, there's these idea of these Grecian route that then propagated all throughout multiple different civilizations the same way Greece did through like trade.
Yeah.
So I would wonder if even it's rooted further back than something like Amdapor, or
could be.
I think and I think the like uncharitable easy read is they were going with Grecian stuff early on with Amdapor, and they were like, oh wait, Sharlayan's supposed to, they got to they started getting into Heaven's Word and we're developing Sharlayan. It's like, oh wait, maybe we want them to be like the true proto-Greece.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even think that's uncharitable to say. I think it's just interesting to speculate on where their minds were at different points in the creation of the game.
Yeah, I agree. I like to talk about these cultural touchstones. And another weird, small thing that surprised me, I don't know if this was my own ignorance, I did not know that Kryl wasn't an Archon.
I think I assumed that because of realizing a while ago that Graha wasn't one, or that he hadn't graduated the studium, and that realizing that Graha hadn't graduated made me kind of realize to think about that more, and basically just from then on, it's if I don't see a tattoo, I assume they're not one until explicitly stated otherwise, because they I
think that's smart.
Put those tattoos so front and center on all the characters that it's important for.
Yeah, it's just that Kryl is so sort of wise and so knowledgeable that I just sort of thought, when you first meet Graha, he comes across as sort of an incorrigible undergrad.
It really does.
But Kryl has always been sort of very intelligent, very, very capable. And not to say that Graha isn't and wasn't, of course he massively is now, but it was just, I had just assumed, I suppose, that she was, with no basis, really.
You can think, though, about the way in which Alphino, right? I mean, I say too, but Alphino graduated so early and is, this brilliant scholar in a lot of ways. And I think you remember, right, that Kryl had been focusing on working with Baldesion. Right, which means that if you're with Baldesion, you're less likely to become an Archon just by merit of the fact that you're out doing things rather than being a part of Sharlayan society on the reg. And then on top of that, you got to think about the fact that most of, she was experienced beforehand, but Vol disappeared. And since then, she's been basically doing everything she can for the Scions, right? So there's never probably been a moment for her to really be recognized as one within the recent days, and prior to that, she may have kind of still in her, as wise and as smart as she is, in her sort of early days of trying to create a specific contribution. And that's the other aspect, right? Is that she's very multifaceted, but part of what's supposed to be the thing about getting an Archon tattoo is that it's supposed to be you provided a very specific grand contribution to Sharlayan as a whole.
The only thing I could think was would be that she'd write like a thesis on the Echo. I can't really think of another subject she'd do.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I really wanted us to walk into the Annex and there'd be a pile of books, and we read them, and each one tells us the title of the Scions thesis and a brief description of what it was.
Why'd you have to tell me that? Now I want that too. God damn it. We need to get an interview with Koji where we just recommend ideas, and he's like, "Thanks, I'm a developer. I can come up with these on my own, but very much appreciate it. But also, like, please, I beg of you, let us know these things."
I like to think Thancred would be called Hardcore Parkour Applications of Physicality in Sharlayan.
Niniri, you gotta stop making me laugh. I like that. I like that a lot, and I'm sure that Urianges has a lot of doth and thee in it.
Yes.
So Kryle seems to directly imply that Louisoix was a member of the Forum.
Right.
Which is something I've been thinking about for a long time, like way before Endwalker coming out. Here's the difficulty for that, is that if he was a member of the Forum, he should have known about the plan for, like, Sharlayan's Exodus plan.
Right.
He wouldn't have ever been able to say anything, so it's not like, oh, why didn't he tell us? Obviously not. But the question is if he forsook his duty as the Forum and left the Forum, does he forget completely about if you cease being a Forum member, do you no longer know about the Exodus plan? Does the memories tied to it, basically as part of the spell, are they removed from your mind? Like, what is your
I have this idea where, like, I seem to idolize Louisoix a little bit, and I'm just like, could the spell even do that to Louisoix? But probably, yeah. I mean, it is definitely phrased as extremely powerful. It is just challenging to me, right, to think of Louisoix as having known, even if you forgot. I mean, like, having known and not found some way to tell us, or maybe he wouldn't even want to tell us. Maybe he planned to tell us. He certainly didn't plan to die. I can't know. Maybe he was like, I'll tell everyone at a later date, or I'll figure out some way to.
Yeah, and I think there's another reading too, which is another way is, even if he does, the fact that he chooses to go to Eorzea is almost in some ways more heroic, right? Because it's him being in the here and now, and him choosing, no, we need to save each other now, and we need to stand for each other now, not just plan for our inevitable flight, right? Like, there is a value to life in the here and now, regardless of whether or not it's doomed later on, which then ties him yet again to the whole sort of thematic ideas in Endwalker.
That's what I was about to say. This idea of the present is worthwhile, even if it's, temporal, even if it's not permanent. Then I think that definitely ties into it. It represents the themes of Endwalker, and I think the themes also of other expansions. This is not a theme that has only been in Endwalker, but it's definitely, in my mind, the core theme of Endwalker, sort of experience as value.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think about it in my brain is that the journey is the meaning, right? That the journey is the valuable part, not the destination. As we, see in the Dead Ends, as we see throughout, Ultima Thule and stuff, you can't change the inevitable ephemerality of things.
Yeah.
What do you then do with that? That's the question at the heart of Endwalker, is what do you do with the understanding that ephemerality is not something you can avoid? Do you despair, or do you find meaning within that? And as someone who's personally existentialist, and to get on a slightly serious note, someone who's had a really hard time contending with the idea of death and oblivion my entire life, Endwalker, I think, might be the first piece of media, and frankly, the first thing I've ever experienced that gave me any sort of small amount of solace. And so for that, if for nothing else, for that, I'm incredibly thankful to it.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile in that regard, definitely. It is essentially a tale of finding value in the present, of almost mindfulness, if you abstract it out enough.
Yeah, definitely the same sentiment, at the very least.
Yeah, of the value of friendship, of just getting up in the morning and eating a piece of nice toast.
There's a value in the doing of things, and that's also one of my favorite sort of thematic parts of, it might seem strange, but the Dark Souls games, is this idea of you cannot stop the inevitable, especially 1 and 3, you cannot stop the inevitable fading of fire, you cannot stop the inevitable decline of the world, what do you then do with that, right? And that's literally the sort of metaphor of what hollowing in that game is all about, is that idea of like slowly losing hope and falling to despair. What do you do when purpose has to be what you make it?
Yeah. I mean, it may not seem it on a surface level, but just like the Souls series, the Final Fantasy XIV world is a cyclical one. Less directly, but every 1,500 years roughly, the world does sort of semi-reset. I mean, Eorzea semi-resets. We see civilizations that endure calamities outside, like Bosha, but there is this cyclical.
But widely, the status quo of the world functionally is reset. Even if it's only one continent, that still changes the geopolitical dynamics of the world so completely.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that even if Bosha survived the Fourth Umbral Calamity, the changing of Zadnor drastically affected them.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So the next part that we got to get on, that we've got to, I don't want to say debate, because I think this is just more interesting than that, but is which do you do first? Do you do Thavnair, or do you do Labyrinthos first? And we did different ones first, so I would love to hear your...
Oh, really?
Yes, I did Thavnair first. So I'd love to hear your argument, or at least your feelings on why you did Labyrinthos first.
Okay, so my first one was that we were already in Sharlayan, so it felt natural to flow on through Sharlayan, then go to sort of Thavnair. But also, outside of personal preference for the city-states of Eorzea as we know them, which is pseudo-Sharlayan, obviously, I also just felt that I was really interested to pursue the stories contained within Sharlayan, foreshadowing and delving into the Levia story and continuing on the look into this mysterious mission, this sort of secrecy, the Gleeners, all of that. And I was extremely excited to get to Thavnair. I've been looking forward to Thavnair for almost as long as I've been looking forward to get to Sharlayan. But the fact that I had to leave to go to Thavnair, whereas Sharlayan I was already there, it just felt more natural to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, another point I'd ask is, which did you do first for Shadowbringers? Alphino or Alizé?
That's a good point. I did... Oh god, I think I did Alizé first.
I did Alizé first as well. I would argue that both in Shadowbringers and Endwalker, there is a canonical answer technically to both of those, in that it is Alphino first and it is Labyrinthos first for Shadowbringers and Endwalkers, which is the opposite of what I did. But I would argue that I think in both cases, there are legitimate reasons why either answer is a good answer. I think there's things about... so why I picked Thavnair is partially, in my mind, it was, the Scions will be going and talking to people and studying for a little bit. I'm going to go out to Thavnair, take care of some stuff, and come back.
Yeah, I see that.
Which, that's reliant on your perception of how things are happening when you're not around. And the thing is I knew I was going to be playing hardcore for literally, had a week set aside to do it. So I wasn't so much worried about... I knew both stories I wanted really fucking bad.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to get them, and I was going to get them in the same day. So for Thavnair, you get to the end of Thavnair, and you kind of want to go do the tower. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But you get to the end of Sharlayan, and you're told, don't go digging anymore. And you're like, but I want to... and now you're just kind of stuck not doing anything, and that kind of sucks.
It does.
And I had more points on this that I think I just didn't write down, but I think there's like little minutia reasons throughout both why, maybe doing Thavnair works better for this reason, or why Labyrinthos kind of works better for this reason. So I think, I don't think, there is an actively better one, and I think your mileage is totally going to vary. I just think it's a really interesting discussion that they allow you that choice, and that they don't allow you that choice, but it's kind of a false choice because one of them is hardcore the right answer.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, it's I loved both stories. I thought they were both fantastic.
Yes. Oh my god!
In fact, if I'm honest, I think I maybe enjoyed Thavnair a little more.
Well, Thavnair gets to be a little more active, right?
Yeah.
As much as we care about the lore, the Labyrinthos gets to be sort of starting towards the steps of Revelation, and we get to learn a lot about Sharlayan, but you don't get an Amon moment in Labyrinthos.
Right.
And there's also a lot in which there's the detail and minutia of Sharlayan is new, but a lot of the broad strokes in some ways aren't. Whereas even with Thavnair, I think there's a lot of big parts to it that we're just unaware of, like sort of the religion of Thavnair, understanding the relationship between the Matanga and the Aura, and that it kind of helping us like understand, what this is, maybe why this sort of lore thing is happening.
Right.
I don't know that it's true for you. I mean that more for me, I guess.
No, I agree. In fact, I found the Aura and the Huron migrations into Thavnair really interesting. I think there are a somewhat clear allusion to the Indo-European migration into India.
Absolutely. And I think the other really interesting parallel that we'll get into it for sure, but is the parallel between the migration of peoples to Thavnair and the migration of peoples to Mericidia, and the relationship between those peoples and Vritra and those peoples and Tiamat and Bahamut.
Yeah, I see that. It seems like the Hyr just migrate everywhere. They just get everywhere, don't they?
I'm pretty sure there's literally a passage in EE1 that basically says as much.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. They do seem to just spread around everywhere, and I like that they're consistent with that. They keep calling back to it. Speaking of peoples and of migrations and of all that, I really loved learning about Corvos. And we've mentioned before. At first, I thought,
oh my god, yes.
I thought, okay, so we'll get mention of Corvos. We know that it was a work camp, and then it became sort of a center of Miqo'te civilization because it was occupied mostly by Miqo'te, and then it became Locus Aminus, ruled by the Darnus family, and then and Labyrinthus is based on Corvus, right? That's what gets it brought up.
Oh, I totally missed that. Really?
Oh, they say Labyrinthus was modeled in some way on Corvus.
I don't know how I missed that 2 times in a row. Holy or was that was that in the cutscene dialogue?
It could be a side NPC that's like on a farm or something that you talk to. I don't have noted down the source.
I mean that's totally fine. I would have been genuinely upset at myself if I had watched the cutscenes twice. And at this point, if I see Corvos anything, like if I just see Corvos show up, I'm like, I don't care. I'm screenshot, taking notes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are going to Corvos.
We are going to Corvos. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah, it is. And I'm excited for it. Like I said, at first, when they first named out Corvos, I'm like, oh, cool, that's interesting lore. It's really interesting to hear, where the G tribe are from, where all of this happens. And I've always kind of wanted to know where in Ilsabard the Miqo'te went before they migrated back. So that's good to know. Then they keep bringing it up, and it becomes very clear over time that we are going to Corvus. It's an important part of the story, and also the story of Garlemald as a nation.
Well, in some ways, it is not everything, but it is everything to much of Garlean society. And part of that is Solas's vault. But in order to understand the Garleans, you must understand their relationship to Locus Aminos, right? Like, that is a fundamental part of the chip on their shoulder. It is a fundamental part of how they were able to be roused to the imperial frenzy they have. It's just super, super fucking important. And it's super fucking important for Endwalker for understanding Garlemald. But on top of that, it's super fucking important for the understanding of Ilsabardian, Garleans. And the fact that they're not just going to be a dropped note going forward. Figuring out the geopolitical world post Endwalker is going to be a major part of the background storytelling and like foreground storytelling.
Yeah, we've got a lot to learn about. We've got to learn about Still, we have stuff to learn about the Rideranan pre-Garleans, and then we have a lot to learn about the Corvosi pre-Garleans, and then I'd love to learn more about just core Garlemald, how they settled into the north, how they developed, all that.
Well, and also the relationship to the other outlying regions like Nalmask and Landis, places that we just don't know jack shit about that are going to matter. And the thing is do the Garleans create a new Garlemald in Garlemald, or is part of the story about a question about where are now the Garleans going to locate themselves? What becomes their new home?
Yeah, I definitely think we see some Garleans continue to live in Garlemald, but I don't think it's viable to sustain a large population there without the spoils of Empire.
I agree on both accounts, and I think the other, because they say as much, right? Like, there's multiple side quests and stuff that there are people here who, regardless of the futility of it, are going to stay. Some of them because they're stubborn, some of them because they still want to make something of it. Yeah. And so I think there is an inevitable population that stays there, but I do really wonder if we have a Realm Reborn style patch content where like there's sort of the background political intrigue going on around in the sort of 6.x stuff about, hey, Where are all these Guardians going? Hey, there are a lot of people who suffered under them. We're going to be dealing with the fallout of that societal clashing, right? Like there are a lot of people who are going to be devoted to trying to mend those bridges and to build a better future. But as we know, as a major theme throughout every one of Endwalker's expansion, or through Final Fantasy XIV's expansions, things don't heal overnight. Traumas and pains and societal breakings don't heal overnight. I mean, literally, even the role quests go on about that.
Yeah, I mean, the role quests are essentially sort of miniature, well, character arcs, yes, but also the most of them, at least, are centered on how we heal from and progress from war and conflict. And most relevantly, I think perhaps would be the healer role quest, which is my favorite role quest. Partially because I love Arnvald, I love Fadala, I love Raban, I love etc. etc. I love Stormblood.
I was just talking to some of our community members. We're doing Heaven on High together because
Yes.
some of them had completed it, and I was just talking about all of that same stuff where I was just very, very excited or not very excited, but just like I love Fordola, I love Arenvald because of their arcs, right? Not because like, oh, the Fordola showed up and I'm like, oh, she's such a cool design, I stand Fordola. Not at all. But because they fucking earned an amazing character arc.
Yeah.
And did that thing that they do real well, which is make you understand someone without having to condone them, but also allowing them the ability to grow, right? The ability to change, to be more than what they were. Not saying you must always be this thing.
Yes. Yeah.
While also having characters who will not acknowledge that they've changed, or characters who are suffered too much harm from their actions that they cannot acknowledge their change or forgive them. They don't just let people grow and change and everything's fine. It's like, no, there are complications that come with that, but it doesn't mean that's not worth doing and valuable.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I mean, you see that in the MSQ, you see it through Euless?
I don't think it's a hard J. I think you're right. I think it's
I think it is. If we're going Roman, I think it would be like Euless. I mean, you see it through numerous NPCs in the role quest. You see it through. I mean, I think there's maybe elements you could draw on about Meteon with that as well, if you really wanted to.
Oh yeah, that's complicated in even another way.
It is, yeah.
I mean, leaping forward and coming off your point for a second, I really appreciate how they handle Garlemald and how they have each character being a representation of themselves, their beliefs, the things, the world in which they grew up in, the fact that you might be the hero, but you're not everyone's hero.
Yeah.
And I think just as importantly, there's two things that bug me a lot, which is, oh, it's Shades of Grey as kind of a bullshit. Oh, it's just Shades of Grey. It's like, no, what those Shades of Grey are still matter, right? How you articulate those Shades of Grey still matter. And the other thing is someone saying, oh, it's not perfect. It's no, nothing's perfect. That's it. Like it's a useless thing to question whether or not a thing is perfect. Ergo, for me, it's annoying anytime it gets brought up. But that's just a Druthers thing. But the reason that, for me, the valuable thing, right, is the interrogation of what the things is and what the thing's value is and what it succeeds and where it fails. And that is what the valuable thing is, not whether or not it's, a 10 out of 10 perfect or not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think talking about this idea that we are a hero, but we're not everyone's hero, sort of follows through my own favorite thought about the Ascians, in that they are heroes, they're just not the heroes of our world. And we are heroes, but we're not heroes of Garlemald. We start to build maybe slightly part of that in the questline when we're helping them. We're maybe... Because there's no winner in this war. Not really. We don't win if we destroy Garlemald, who's just consigned the people to misery.
There's no victory in conquering.
Right.
The only value we get by winning in Garlemald is by proving humanity. That is the only victory we can attempt to try and gain, and that's shown through the fact that despite them being our enemies, right, despite them being all these things, we're still trying to be there to save them. That is our goal, is to save these people. It's not to just defeat them so that we don't have to worry about Garlemald anymore. It is just as vital that we get to Xenos as it is that we save those people of Garlemald, or at the very least, whether or not you personally agree with that as an individual, that is what the story is saying. That is what the story clearly is making clear. So, I guess that wraps up our first episode of Endtalkers.
It certainly does. It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. Did you, I feel like I'm going to remember the events of Endwalker a lot better after doing this.
I agree. You know what they say, the best way to learn is to teach.
Okay, well then, thank you all for listening, and please like, comment, and subscribe. The usual, necessary things to say for a channel, but we, again, do really appreciate it, and it's super helpful.
We do. Feel free to check out the site, and please leave us any feedback that you have on the below the video, and we also have a Discord that will be linked in the description.
And with that, bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
This content was brought to you by the Eorzean Archives. If you enjoyed this video, help us please the 12 by leaving a like and subscribing for new content every Thursday. And comment down below with any topic you'd like to see our Archons cover in the future. For even more content, discussion, and exclusives, please check out our Discord and consider supporting us on Patreon.